When I look back now, I still can't quite believe how quickly a single evening can destroy the version of life you thought you were living. I was 45 years old when it happened, old enough to think I knew better, yet naive enough to cling to hope where none existed. And it all began at my mother-in-law's anniversary gala, the night my past and future split clean down the middle. The ballroom was so extravagant it almost felt hostile. Gold-rimmed glassware, chandeliers dripping with crystals, violins humming in the corners, everything designed to impress the city's elite. I stood near the edge of the room, clutching a small handbag I bought on clearance because my husband, Adrian, insisted we mind the family budget. I wore a beige dress I'd stitched together myself over 3 late nights. He said we couldn't afford anything new, and somehow I believed him. I remember smoothing that dress over my hips, trying not to look like someone who'd wandered into the wrong world. From across the room, Adrian looked like he owned the night, tall, polished, shaking hands with men whose watch collections cost more than our car. He didn't see me at first, or maybe he did and pretended not to. That was always his specialty. I'd nearly worked up the courage to approach his mother, Eleanor, the queen bee of the social scene, when she spun abruptly, bumping her heavy elbow into my arm. The champagne flute slipped from my fingers, shattered loudly, and the entire ballroom froze. Eleanor gasped dramatically as if I'd dumped the glass on purpose. A few drops had touched her dress, barely visible, yet she acted as though I'd set her on fire. And then Adrian saw me. I will never forget the way his face contorted, not with concern, not even with embarrassment, but with pure calculated fury. "What is wrong with you?" he hissed through a forced smile. "Can't you do anything without humiliating me?" Before I could speak, before I could even breathe, he seized my arm and dragged me through the center of the ballroom. People stared. Some even nodded approvingly. They liked seeing power on display, the man putting his messy wife in her place. Outside, 2 security guards, our own guards, grabbed me at his command. "Put her in the car, lock it." Their hands were rough, but not as rough as the words Adrian spit as he walked away without looking back. "You disgrace my family. Stay in the car until I decide what to do with you." They shoved me into the back of the black sedan, slammed the door, and the lock clicked. I was trapped. I pounded on the window, tears blurring the glowing ballroom lights. I thought my marriage had hit its lowest point. But I was wrong. Because then the driver, quiet, aging Mr. Culver, turned off the engine, looked at me through the mirror, and said in a tone I'd never heard from him, "Ma'am, please stop crying. You need to know something. The company, the car, the guards, everything your husband thinks he owns, none of it belongs to him anymore." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" He handed me a tablet. "Your father finished the transfer this morning. You're the owner now, all of it." My breath stopped. "And you need to decide," he said calmly, "what we should do with your husband." I had no idea yet that the truth was far worse than betrayal. It was a decade-long trap I'd never seen coming. To understand why Mr. Culver's words hit me like an earthquake, you need to know what happened just 1 hour before that moment, back when I still believed my marriage, though imperfect, was at least real. The celebration had been arranged for Eleanor's 70th birthday, held in the most exclusive venue in the city. It was the kind of event where people pretended to adore one another while secretly calculating status and influence. I had always felt like a misplaced pawn in those circles, tolerated only because I was Adrian's wife. I remember standing near a marble column, feeling invisible. Everyone else shimmered in jewels and couture gowns. I wore the dress I patched together with hope instead of fabric luxury. Adrian always claimed we were tight on cash, that the company finances were precarious. And so I believed we were a humble, struggling pair trying to manage a lavish world. But the truth was a beast waiting to reveal itself. When Adrian finally noticed me from across the room, his irritation was immediate. He excused himself from a group of investors and stormed toward me, the smile stuck on his lips like a mask. He squeezed my elbow so hard I winced. "Stop standing like a lost puppy," he muttered. "You look like you don't belong here." His words sank into me like they always did, quietly but painfully. After 10 years of marriage, I'd learned to swallow my hurt the way other wives swallowed champagne. He forced me toward the main table, where Eleanor sat like a monarch accepting her annual homage. I tried to breathe. I tried to blend in. I tried foolishly to fit into a world that had never wanted me. But the moment I stepped forward to greet her politely, Eleanor made her move. With a sweeping and theatrical gesture, she slammed her elbow into my arm. The glass fell. The music stopped. Hundreds of eyes turned. And the humiliation was instant, total, suffocating. I can still hear her voice in my memory, that cold sigh, dripping with staged disappointment. Well, of course, what else could I expect? As if my mere presence was an offense. What followed happened so fast I barely understood it myself. Adrian exploded publicly, dragging me across the ballroom as if I were a stain on his reputation. People applauded him. Applauded. That applause haunts me still. He left me locked in that sedan like a misbehaving child. But it was inside that same car that the truth I'd been blind to for years finally surfaced. When the locks clicked, and I sat alone in the dark interior, sobbing, I thought my life was ending. But then Mr. Culver, usually silent, almost ghost-like, turned to face me. "Your father," he said, "never stopped watching over you. And what he uncovered about your husband you deserved to know sooner." He handed me the tablet, his voice steady and strangely formal. "Your father transferred control of the entire corporation to you today. Adrian is no longer the owner. His contract ended last night." My world tilted. "Contract?" I whispered. "What contract?" Mr. Culver didn't flinch. "The contract that defined your marriage." I felt my heartbeat spike. The air around me thickened. "What are you saying?" I breathed. "That your husband," he said grimly, "was hired to marry you." The words hit me like a physical blow. Before I could ask anything else, he added, "And you haven't even seen the worst of it yet." The truth about my marriage was darker, colder, and far more calculated than betrayal, and I was about to learn exactly how deep the deception went. For a long moment, I just stared at Mr. Culver, my breath caught somewhere between disbelief and dread. His face, usually unreadable after decades of service, now carried a seriousness that frightened me. "What do you mean hired?" I whispered. Mr. Culver reached for the glove compartment and removed a thick, folded document sealed in a clear envelope. "Your father left instructions," he said. "He asked that I give you this only when the truth came to the surface, and that happened tonight." My fingers trembled as I took it. Inside was an official-looking agreement, one my father had drafted 10 years earlier, after retiring from the corporate world to live a quieter life. But my father wasn't the simple, detached man Adrian always made him out to be. He was strategic, protective, observant, and clearly he'd known something I didn't. As I unfolded the pages, Mr. Culver began speaking, each word like a stone dropping into cold water. 10 years ago, your father agreed to invest in Adrian. Large scale. More money than Adrian could ever dream of accessing alone. But he didn't want that money falling into the wrong hands. I scanned the document, my heart pounding. "So he set a condition," Mr. Culver continued. "Adrian would receive financial control only if he remained married to you faithfully, continuously, for exactly 10 years. If he divorced you early or mistreated you publicly, all assets would revert to you." The car suddenly felt colder. My marriage had been a business arrangement. "But why?" I whispered. "Why would my own father arrange something like this? Why didn't he tell me?" "Your father suspected Adrian wasn't marrying you for love," Mr. Culver said softly. "He hoped he was wrong. He wanted to give Adrian a chance to prove himself. He believed that maybe, just maybe, Adrian might actually come to love you." The words stung in ways I can't fully describe. "But Adrian never loved you," he continued. "He loved what he thought he would inherit." I felt tears burning again, but this time they weren't helpless tears. They were tears of realization, of awakening. "So my father tried to protect me," I murmured. Mr. Culver nodded. "He set a trap, but Adrian thought he was the hunter." I flipped through the contract, trying to absorb the details. There was a clause stating that once the 10 years expired, as they had that very night, Adrian's rights would be terminated automatically if he filed for divorce. And then I saw it. A date. A signature from Adrian's lawyer, filed the morning after the party. The divorce petition was ready. He hadn't just humiliated me, he had planned my removal. My voice cracked. He was going to get rid of me tomorrow. "Yes," Mr. Culver said quietly. "And the moment he did, he would lose everything. Your father made sure of it, and Adrian had no idea." A bitter laugh escaped me. My entire marriage, 10 years of devotion, patience, compromise, had been nothing but a countdown on a clock I didn't even know existed. "Why did Adrian act like tonight mattered so much?" I asked. Mr. Culver sighed. "Because he believed control was finally within reach. He thought once the anniversary passed, he would own the company. He thought he could discard you without consequence." He looked at me then, really looked. "But here's the part he never saw coming. Your father moved the ownership earlier, signed everything over to you this morning." I stared at him, a rush of hot and cold rolling through me. "And now," he finished, "Adrian isn't just powerless, he's exposed." The reality settled in my bones, heavy, sharp, undeniable. My husband wasn't just cruel, he was cornered. But I still didn't know the ugliest truth, the one that would turn betrayal into something far more unforgivable. As the car sat motionless outside the glittering venue, I held the contract in my hands, a contract that rewrote the last 10 years of my life. I kept reading the same lines over and over as if repetition would somehow make them less devastating. I wasn't sure if my shock came from realizing Adrian had planned to discard me or from realizing my marriage had been dead long before I knew it existed. But then Mr. Culver handed me something even worse, a separate sheet folded neatly, as if waiting for its chance to destroy me. Adrian's divorce petition. Filed for the next morning. Everything inside me hollowed out. He was going to serve you first thing, Mr. Culver said. He instructed security to escort you out of the penthouse afterward. I squeezed my eyes shut. 10 years of cooking, cleaning, quietly loving a man who mocked me when no one was looking, 10 years of holding our marriage together, believing we were partners. And all the while, he was counting down to his payday. When I opened my eyes again, something inside me felt different. Not broken, awake. I can't go back in there, I whispered. I can't even look at him. You won't need to, Mr. Culver replied. He thinks he holds the power tonight. He has no idea he lost it 12 hours ago. I stared through the tinted window at the glowing ballroom. Adrian was inside, laughing, basking in admiration, drinking wine as though the world belonged to him. That building, I murmured. His reputation, those people, all of it, he thinks it's his. Mr. Culver nodded. But none of it is. Strange, icy calm settled into my bones, a feeling I'd never experienced before. Not anger, not sorrow, clarity. What else did I know? I asked, staring at my reflection in the window, a woman I barely recognized anymore. Mr. Culver hesitated, and that hesitation alone made my stomach twist. There's more, he said quietly. Much more. Your father didn't just protect the company, he protected you. He's been watching Adrian for years. And what he uncovered, he didn't finish. He handed me a second folder. I opened it and nearly dropped it. Inside were photographs of me, of my father's home, of my daily routine taken months before Adrian and I ever met. My breath seized. Adrian hired a private investigator before he approached you, Mr. Culver explained. He wanted to know everything, your habits, your vulnerabilities, your father's finances. He did fall in love with you, he targeted you. A tremor passed through me. So he was studying me. Yes, Mr. Culver said. Your father found proof years ago, but he didn't intervene. He believed you deserved the truth to reveal itself when you were ready to see it. My throat tightened. And now, he said firmly, you're ready. I pressed the back of my hand against my mouth to keep from crying. Not because I was hurt, I'd done enough crying for one night, but because I finally understood the depth of the deception. This wasn't a failed marriage. It was a long con. And I had been the prize. I looked back at the glowing ballroom doors. He thinks he's still in control, I whispered. For now, Mr. Culver said, but the moment you step inside, his entire world will crumble. I felt myself slowly exhale. Then I opened the car door. But walking back into that ballroom wasn't the dangerous part. The dangerous part was what I planned to do once I was inside. When I stepped out of the car, the night air felt different, sharper, cleaner, almost electric. The humiliation Adrian intended for me had already lost its power. Now that I knew the truth, every insult he ever threw at me felt like evidence, not injury. 2 guards stood at the entrance, the same ones who had shoved me inside the sedan minutes earlier. They stiffened when they saw me walking toward them. Mrs. Hale, we're not supposed to let you in, one said uncertainly. Mr. Culver stepped out behind me and gave a subtle hand gesture, a gesture I'd never seen him use, one that apparently felt like an order carved in stone. The guards instantly stepped aside. Good evening, ma'am, the other said, straightening his jacket. I didn't stop, didn't speak, didn't even look at them. I simply walked into the ballroom with a calmness I didn't even know I possessed. The instant I crossed the threshold, the atmosphere shifted. Music faltered. Conversations quieted. Heads turned. Whispers rippled like cold waves. I walked forward, each step tapping against the marble floor, steady and deliberate. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't shrinking. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be small. I was just done. Adrian noticed me first. His face twisted, not with shame, but with rage. Rage that I dared to exist where he had erased me. He stormed toward me, voice already raised. Have you lost your mind? I told you to stay in the car. I walked past him. As though he were a breeze or a shadow, something inconsequential. His mouth fell open. I stepped onto the small stage, the one reserved for toasts and speeches. The microphone gleamed beneath the chandelier. I grasped it slowly, deliberately. Good evening, I said. The sound echoed through the hall, silencing the room entirely. Dozens of faces stared, confused, hungry for drama, ready for gossip. Adrian hissed behind me, get down from there. He turned toward the security team, but they didn't move. Mr. Culver stood beside them, arms behind his back, eyes fixed forward like a man fulfilling a final promise. I looked at Adrian then directly. Since we're all gathered here, I said, there's something important I need to announce. Alina stiffened in her regal chair. People leaned in. My name is Serena Hale, I continued, and as of this morning, I am the sole owner and executive authority of Hale Industries. Gasps, whispers, a nervous laugh somewhere in the back. Adrian barked, she's joking, she's unstable. Ignore this, I raised a hand, silencing him. Your contract expired last night, Adrian. As of today, you no longer have access to company property, accounts, vehicles, or this event. I turned toward the bewildered crowd. I am also ending the celebration immediately. It was paid for illegally using company funds. Alina's mouth fell open in horror. The orchestra froze. The waitstaff stiffened. Guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Adrian lunged toward me, but two guards intercepted him, blocking his path. Step back, Mr. Hale, one said. Mr. Hale, not sir, not boss, not CEO, Mr. Nothing. I met Adrian's wild, disbelieving stare. He looked trapped, and he should have been. 10 years of manipulation had led him to this exact moment, and I wasn't finished. Before anyone leaves, I said, there's one more thing you all deserve to know. I paused, letting the tension pull tight. The story of how Adrian and I met wasn't a love story. The room leaned forward. It was a transaction. And once I exposed that truth, his entire empire, including his mother, would begin to unravel right in front of everyone. A murmur rippled through the ballroom, sharp and restless, as if the air itself sensed what was coming. I stood on the stage, looking down at Adrian, the man who had worn a mask for 10 years and believed I'd never tear it off. He shook his head frantically, mouthing, "Don't you dare." But I dared. I'd spent too many years swallowing my truth to keep his image intact. Tonight I was done protecting him from consequences he willingly created. I lifted the microphone again. You see, I said, my voice steady, Adrian didn't fall in love with me. He didn't meet me by fate. He didn't chase me because of who I was. People leaned forward, enthralled. He approached me, I continued, because he was instructed to. A woman near the front gasped loudly. Alina clutched her pearls so hard they rattled. Adrian tried to climb onto the stage, but security stepped in again. Sir, stay where you are. He wasn't used to hearing sir in that tone. It rattled him more than anything I'd said so far. I turned toward the crowd. Before we met, Adrian hired a private investigator to track my routines, my friendships, my weaknesses, even my father's health. My hands stopped trembling. My heart stopped racing. For once, I felt like the person in control of my own story. He knew exactly who I was before pretending to accidentally bump into me at that charity gala. He came prepared with a script, words he practiced, facial expressions he rehearsed, a performance he intended to maintain just long enough to gain access to my father's company. Murmurs grew louder. Heads turned sharply toward Adrian. He planned everything, I said, scanning the crowd. The rushed engagement, the charming smiles, the carefully timed acts of affection. Every moment of the first year was designed to convince me that he was the man my father would trust. I stepped down one stair toward him, and once he gained control of the company's finances, the man I married disappeared. Adrian yelled, "She's lying, she's twisting everything." But his voice cracked with desperation, not authority. I ignored him. My father never trusted him fully. Created a contract that allowed Adrian access only if he remained married to me for 10 years, with no betrayal, no misconduct, no mistreatment. I lifted the contract from the folder Culver had given me, raising it for the guests to see. And tonight, less than an hour ago, this man dragged me out of this ballroom and locked me in a car like a criminal for spilling a drink. A collective gasp. Alina's face drained of color. He violated the contract, years ago, multiple times. I held up the divorce petition. And this, he planned to file it tomorrow morning. A stunned silence fell over the room, heavy and breathless. And with that decision, I finished, he forfeited every legal right he had to the company. My father ensured that the moment he filed for divorce, every share, every asset would revert to me. Alina stood abruptly, pointing a trembling finger at me. This is absurd, you're attacking your own. It's not an attack, I cut in calmly. It's the truth. And it's documented. Adrian looked around wildly at the guards, the board members, the guests who once admired him. Every face had changed, doubt replacing respect, shock replacing loyalty. It was the first moment he realized he was truly alone. I lowered the microphone. And I'm not done. Because the next revelation wouldn't just dismantle Adrian, it would expose the secret his mother had helped him hide for years. The silence in the ballroom thickened into something almost tangible, a cold, suffocating stillness that wrapped itself around every person present. But no one's reaction fascinated me more than Alina's. She wasn't just shocked. She was terrified. For the first time since I'd met her 10 years ago, her perfectly trained expression cracked. Her painted smile fell apart, revealing the truth beneath. She knew exactly what I was saying because she had been part of it. I stepped off the stage, heels tapping across the marble floor, each step deliberate, each step aimed toward her. "I want to tell all of you something else," I said, addressing the crowd but keeping my eyes locked on Alina. Adrian didn't deceive me alone, his mother helped him. Dozens of gasps. Someone whispered, "No wonder she hated her." Alina stiffened, lifting her chin in a desperate attempt to reclaim her icy composure. "This is slander," she spat. "You're trying to drag our family name through the mud because you're embarrassed about your behavior tonight." I tilted my head. "Embarrassed? Alina, you orchestrated my humiliation. You've been orchestrating it for years." Her face paled further. I held up the folder Mr. Culver had given me earlier. "You see, my father kept more than contract documents. He kept surveillance records, audio files, text message logs, and most importantly, I pulled out a printed transcript. Your communications with the investigator Adrian hired before he met me." A ripple of outrage spread through the room. Adrian's voice rose behind me. "Mother, don't say anything, but the damage was already done." I read aloud, "Make sure she attends the charity gala. My son will handle the rest." Alina lunged forward. "You took that out of context." "Oh," I arched an eyebrow. "Then what about this one?" I flipped the page. "If she inherits that company, we are doomed. Do whatever it takes to keep her fragile and dependent." The crowd erupted, half in disbelief, half in disgust. Alina's hands trembled. "You manipulated this." "Manipulated?" I repeated sharply. "How about the way you manipulated me? You made sure I felt unwelcome from the moment I joined this family. You mocked my clothes, my background, my confidence. You convinced your son that breaking me down was the only way to keep control." I stepped closer, lowering my voice but not my resolve. "You taught him that cruelty was strength," Adrian finally snapped. "Enough, Serena, you think you're some kind of hero. You were nothing before me, nothing." I turned slowly toward him, meeting his fury with a calm that unsettled him more than shouting ever could. "That's the sad part," I said. "I actually believed that once, because you both worked very hard to make sure I did." My gaze flicked back to Alina. "But you forgot something important. You can only control someone who doesn't know their own worth." Her lips quivered. "This is absurd. You have no proof." I held up the envelope of documents. "All of it is here, and copies have already been sent to the board, the legal team, and the media division of the company." Shock, panic, utter silence. Then Alina's voice, barely a whisper, "You would." I leaned in just enough for only she could hear the next line, but loud enough for everyone to feel the shift. "I already did." Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. The kingdom she'd built through intimidation, manipulation, and reputation had cracked in an instant, and she knew it. But the night wasn't over. Adrian still had one secret left, one that even Alina didn't know about. And I was about to expose it, because the final truth wasn't about money or power, it was about the darkest betrayal of all, one that involved another woman. If the ballroom had been tense before, now it was suffocating. Alina looked ready to collapse. Adrian looked ready to explode. The guests hovered in a stunned half-circle around us, unable to look away, trapped between horror and fascination. But they had no idea the real shock was still coming. I placed the incriminating documents back into the folder and took a slow breath. This part hurt in a way no contract or corporate betrayal ever could. Because this truth struck at my heart, not my wealth. "There's one last thing I want to share," I said, my voice steady. "And it doesn't involve money, it involves someone else. Someone my husband hoped none of you would ever know about." Adrian's eyes widened suddenly, a flash of pure, primal panic. "There's nothing else," he said too quickly. "You're delusional." But the word delusional no longer worked on me. I stepped off the stage and onto the ballroom floor, reaching into my handbag, the same bag he always called cheap. I pulled out a small silver flash drive. "You remember this?" I asked him quietly. His face drained of color. "Serena, stop." "Why?" I asked. "Afraid they'll see her." The room erupted in murmurs. Alina's voice cracked into a sharp whisper. Who is she talking about?" I raised my gaze, sweeping it across the curious eyes surrounding us. "Her name," I said, "is Celia." The gasps were almost violent, not because of the name, but because everyone knew that name. Celia Beaumont, young, brilliant, ambitious, a rising star in our company, the woman people whispered had pure talent and natural charm. A woman who had joined the firm 2 years ago and rapidly become Adrian's most promising protege. And now the whispers made sense. Adrian shook his head like a child refusing reality. "This is absurd. Celia and I were just what?" I cut in. "Late?" Mentoring, reviewing reports until dawn, leaving hotels at separate times but always from the same entrance. He froze. The evidence sat in my hand. I turned to the crowd. For months, I suspected something, but I wasn't sure until my father's legal team gave me access to all company security archives this morning. I held up the flash drive. This contains photographs, footage, and audio recordings, all showing my husband and Celia having an affair on company property. In company vehicles, in company-funded suites. A collective gasp blasted through the room. Eleanor clutched her chest. Adrian, tell me this isn't true. But his silence was answer enough. I continued, and before anyone thinks this is just a case of infidelity, no. Celia wasn't simply a lover. She was part of the plan to push me out, the plan to take control once the divorce was filed. Adrian lunged forward, voice cracking. Serena, stop this. Don't understand? No, I said softly. I finally do. And then, with deliberate calm, I walked to a nearby screen, the event's projector, still connected from earlier presentations. I plugged in the flash drive, the screen lit up, and the first image appeared: Adrian and Celia together in an elevator, far too close for mentoring. His hand on her waist, her lips on his cheek, smiling like they had already won. The ballroom erupted. Eleanor screamed, guests shouted, some gasped. Others covered their mouths. Adrian staggered back, his entire body trembling. Serena, please, but there was no please left in me. No loyalty, no fear, no blindness, only truth, and I wasn't done exposing it. Because revealing the affair wasn't the end, the real twist was the role Celia played in a betrayal even Adrian didn't fully understand. The image on the screen froze the ballroom in place. Adrian and Celia's faces glowed beneath the chandelier light, exposed for everyone to see. For a few seconds, all I heard was the heavy thudding of my own heartbeat, not from pain anymore, but from a strange, rising clarity. Adrian wasn't furious now, he was terrified. Serena, he choked out, you don't understand. Celia, she didn't, but words failed him. They always do when lies run out. I turned back to the crowd. I know what you're thinking, that this is a simple case of infidelity, a predictable affair between a powerful man and a younger employee. I paused because this next part even startled me when I discovered it. But this wasn't a love affair, I said. It was an alliance. The murmurs swelled into dozens of overlapping whispers. I lifted another document from my handbag, a printed email exchange my father's legal team had uncovered just hours before the gala. 2 years ago, I said, Celia approached Adrian with an offer. She had ambitions, and she realized marrying into my family was the fastest way up the ladder. So she made him a proposition. I held up the pages. A partnership, a plan. Celia would help Adrian gather leverage against me, emotional manipulation, staged arguments, even positioning me as incompetent during corporate meetings. Eleanor gasped. Adrian, tell me you're not that stupid. But Adrian wasn't even looking at her. He was staring at the documents in my hand, his lips parted in disbelief. You weren't supposed to know about that, he whispered. No, I replied. You weren't supposed to know. The entire room stiffened. I approached him slowly. Because Celia wasn't loyal to you either, Adrian. She wasn't helping you win the company, she was helping herself. You could practically feel the tension crackle. She planned to replace you, I said. The moment the divorce went through and the company was vulnerable, she intended to present your misconduct, secretly recorded conversations, financial irregularities, and emails you never thought she saved. Watch the realization crush him. She was going to take you down, I continued, all the while pretending to be your ally. Adrian staggered back as though the truth had struck him physically. No, she would, but she would, and she did. I tapped the laptop controlling the projector. Another file opened, a recorded voice message. Celia's voice filled the ballroom. Once he divorces Serena, he'll lose everything. He's too dumb to realize it. I'll step in. The board already trusts me more than him. Gasps exploded throughout the room. Adrian's hands shook violently. Turn it off, turn it off. I didn't. It played until the last word. Then the room fell into a suffocating silence. I wasn't the one being replaced, I said quietly. You were. Adrian sank into a nearby chair, head in his hands, the image of a man finally seeing the trap he helped build with no way out. Eleanor collapsed back into her seat, face ashen. My God, what have you done? I stood tall, calm, unshaken. I didn't destroy this family, I said. You both did. I simply stopped protecting you from the consequences. Adrian looked up at me, eyes broken. Serena, please, I didn't know. Exactly, I replied coldly. You never knew anything except greed. But the night still wasn't over. There was one last thing, the final truth that would decide Adrian's fate for good. And that final truth would determine whether Adrian walked out of that ballroom a free man or not at all. For a long, heavy moment, no one in the ballroom spoke. The betrayal, the lies, the recordings, they all hung in the air like a thick fog no one could breathe through. Adrian looked hollowed out. Elinor looked shattered. And the guests, they looked like they were witnessing the downfall of a dynasty. But I wasn't finished. There was still one truth left, the truth only I had the authority to reveal. And it would determine whether Adrian walked out of that ballroom a free man or in handcuffs. Stepped forward, letting the room settle before I spoke again. There is one more thing my father left in my possession, I said, my voice steady. Something he discovered long before I ever knew I needed it. Adrian lifted his head slowly, eyes full of dread. Serena, don't. But I'd spent 10 years biting my tongue. Tonight, silence was no longer an option. I held up a final envelope, smaller than the others, sealed with my father's personal crest. This contains financial records, I said. Records showing that for the past 4 years, Adrian has been funneling money out of the company using shell accounts. A wave of gasps swept through the room. Adrian lurched forward. No, that's not Serena, you don't understand, Celia handled that, I didn't know, I cut him off. Ignorance is not innocence. I opened the envelope and handed the documents to the board chairman, who had risen from his seat, pale and trembling. These accounts, I continued, were traced to Adrian's name. His devices, his passwords, his authorization. Adrian swallowed, his voice barely a whisper. Celia set me up, she told me it was stock transfers. Oh, she absolutely set you up, I said. But you helped her. You signed everything she put in front of you because you were too greedy to ask questions. Elinor buried her face in her hands, shaking. My son can't go to prison. I turned to her, my expression calm but unyielding. That depends, I said quietly, on what happens next. All eyes swung toward me, every breath in the room held still. Adrian pushed himself upright, staggering like a doomed man. Serena, please, I know I hurt you, I know I betrayed you, but prison, you can't let them, please, I studied him. This was the man who had humiliated me, controlled me, manipulated my life, my worth, my perception of love. This was the man who locked me in a car like property, who planned to discard me once my usefulness expired, who never once considered the damage he caused. And now, he begged. I took a slow breath. The board, I announced, will receive full documentation. Adrian collapsed onto the chair behind him, face white as bone. But, I added, I will decide whether the company presses charges. A murmur broke out. Adrian looked up, his voice cracking. Serena, I'll do anything. I'll leave quietly. I'll disappear. I won't contest the divorce. Just don't destroy my life. I studied him, really studied him. For the first time, he didn't look dangerous or powerful. He looked small, weak, like a man who finally understood the cost of his choices. I'm not interested in destroying your life, I said softly. I'm interested in reclaiming mine. Relief flickered across his face, premature relief. I stepped closer. You won't go to prison, I continued. Not if you sign a full confession stating you acted alone, without implicating the company, the employees, or my father. His eyes widened. I'll sign it. And I added sharply, you will leave the city tonight, permanently. You will never approach me, contact me, or try to interfere in my life again. If you do, I gestured toward the documents. Every file goes straight to federal authorities. He nodded, frantically desperate. Yes, anything, I straightened. Then we're done here. Ballroom erupted, some clapping, some whispering, some simply staring at the fallen man who had once acted untouchable. As security escorted Adrian out, Elinor tried to follow, but the weight of her own involvement kept her rooted in place. She didn't even look at me, she couldn't, and me, I walked out of that ballroom alone, but not broken, not diminished, not erased. For the first time in 10 years, I walked out as myself. And at 45 years old, I finally got my life back.